Assalamu alaikum. My name is Zeba Khan. Welcome back to Loving Muslim Marriage. I'm here with Sheikh Abdul Nasser Janga, and we are going to talk about issues related to sex, intimacy, Islam, fiqh, and lots of stuff. And to start with, at the very beginning of this conversation, I want to talk about shame. Because anytime a little naked baby runs through a house anywhere in this country, someone is going to go, shame, 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 shame. And anytime people try to ask a question, they say, aren't you ashamed? Or if people say, I'm, not satisfied with my spouse. Well, aren't you ashamed? Where do we draw the line? How do we understand modesty versus shame?
So, if I may, I'm going to kind of take it back to the Arabic terminology and try to connect it to there. And the only reason why taking it to Arabic is not to take it to a specific language, but to connect it to the Quran and the Hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. So modesty is a very, very noble idea. And typically what modesty is being connected to is haya. And of course, the Prophet ﷺ says in numerous narrations, Al-haya'u min al-iman, it is faith. Al-haya'u shu'batu min al-iman, it is a department, a section of our faith. We were just reading in the Bukhari class today that the Prophet ﷺ said that one of the universal teachings of all the prophets throughout time was that if you lose your sense of dignity and modesty and self-respect, then go do whatever you want, because now you've crossed a certain line. So I think that is what we would call modesty. And I would also kind of like synonymously state along with that is it's dignity. It's to be graceful. It is to respect yourself. And that is the idea of modesty. And that is why we cover ourselves and wear clothing, especially a lot of the kind of, Muslim cultural kind of clothing that people associate with us. That's the thought behind a lot of that kind of clothing. That is the reason why we don't undress in front of even other members of the same gender, right? That's why Muslims aren't supposed to have a locker room kind of culture and things of that nature. So that all is informed by haya, which we can call modesty for short. While shame seems to be associated more so with the burden and the remorse, the regret, the guilt that is associated with having committed something wrong and then realizing that you have done something wrong. And in the instance like you were talking about where somebody else kind of says, aren't you ashamed of yourself? Then that is basically coming from the place that you've done something wrong and you're not realizing it, but somebody else is trying to point it out to you. But that is a direct consequence of having done something wrong. So haya is actually a good thing that comes out of good things and leads to more good things. It's a good thing that's a result of good things and leads to more good things. Whereas shame can be a good thing, but it comes from bad things. And so I think that's kind of where we need to understand the conversation. And now that we got two very clear buckets, we can start to put things in certain buckets. So a man, or anybody for that matter, somebody watching pornography
It's shameful.
feels bad about it later on. That goes in the shame bucket. It's a good thing that they feel bad having done it, but it's born out of having done something clearly wrong. Without a shadow of a doubt.
Yes.
A couple having a conversation with each other or even going to a counselor to improve their relationship, their intimacy with one another and better their relationship is a good thing coming out of a good thing. It doesn't go in the shame bucket. It actually goes in the haya bucket. And what I mean by that is you just have to make sure that you're not being immodest about that conversation. That you're having that conversation behind closed doors. That you're not having that conversation on Facebook with like the two spouses talking to each other about their sex life on Facebook. That
would be shameful.
Exactly. And then that would be where shame would come in again. So But the point of the matter is, the fact of the matter is that I think that there's a huge delineation between the concepts, like you said, about modesty, haya, and then that shame, which is that nadam, that, burden, that weight, that thiql, that burden that is felt as a consequence of having done that something that is clearly bad and sinful. And I think that that's a huge distinction. So as you were talking about, when it comes to education, I can specifically quote instances. Salman al-Farsi radiallahu ta'ala anhu, this is one of my favorite narrations. Someone mentioned, a non-Muslim at that time, said to Salman al-Farsi that, don't y'all feel shameful? And doesn't your prophet feel shameful? And don't y'all feel shameful? And he said, about what? And he said that, aren't you embarrassed by this? That your prophet talks to you about like even, your personal things and your hygiene and everything like that. He goes, he literally taught us how to use the restroom. He said he's like a father to us. So it's not embarrassing for a father to teach his son how to go to the restroom. That's not embarrassing. That's a good thing.
Yeah.
So that's who the Prophet. So Salman al-Farsi says that's our relationship with the Prophet ﷺ. So the Prophet ﷺ was very willing to have these kinds of conversations that address very important things, and there was nothing embarrassing, nothing shameful about it. Ali bin Abi Talib radiallahu ta'ala anhu says that only to just have the barrier of haya and modesty, because Ali was married to the daughter of the Prophet ﷺ, he said, we knew we could ask the Prophet ﷺ questions about our, whether it be about healthy intimacy or about cleanliness due to intimacy and things like that. But because I was married to his daughter, I didn't want to bring up that conversation with him, so I just told a buddy to ask the Prophet ﷺ that sometimes when a husband and wife are maybe engaging in foreplay or just being playful with one another, and it does not reach the point of sexual intercourse, and then for whatever reason you don't continue, and then you want to go pray, so there's no ejaculation but there was maybe some pre-ejaculate, what do you do in that situation? The word in Arabic is madhi. What do you do? And the Prophet ﷺ very clearly in the masjid, people all around him, he just answered the question. He goes, yeah, you clean it up and you make wudu and then you pray. And there was no oh my God, how shameful. Hamna bint Jahash, a Sahabiya, the sister-in-law of the Prophet ﷺ, his wife's sister, comes to him and asks him all types of questions about her menstrual cycle, and then she had some irregular kind of bleeding that was outside of menstruation, was called istihada in Arabic, and she even asked the question about, can I be intimate with my husband? I know we can't be intimate during the actual days of the period of menstruation, but can we be intimate during those irregular days that are kind of on and off, that are istihada, not hayd? And the Prophet ﷺ entertained her question, answered her question without any feeling of oh my God, how dare you? And the list literally goes on and on and on and on. So I think that there is a clear delineation there.
Interesting. So our religion is not ashamed of sex, just our culture.
Yeah, that's a good way to understand it.
Jazakallah khair. We'll answer more questions like these in our next videos.